I'm trapped in a fake marriage to hide my true love, and now my parents want a grandchild. How did my life get this messy? I, 29F, am married to my husband, 30F, for 2 years. Here, in the country I'm from, you're expected to be married and have kids by the time you hit your mid-20s. I've considered myself lesbian for as long as I can remember. I've only ever admired women on television until I was 18. Then I went to Europe for my degree, and that's when I slept with a woman for the first time. In the 5 years I was in Europe, I've dated girls. Although it wasn't anything serious. I felt validated and seen. I came back when I was 26. I was supposed to. I went there on a student loan. From then, my family started pestering me to get married. They started bringing home arranged marriage proposals. I couldn't come out to them. They are very homophobic. Not a day goes in my house without my parents or relatives talking something bad about my cousin, 35mm, who came out when he was in high school. I would sometimes try to join the conversation and side with my cousin, trying to explain it's not wrong and how sexuality works. But I was always responded with, he's a sinner, he ruined our bloodline, and how he cold-heartedly dismissed all his mom's and dad's sacrifices. Around this time, I started visiting a bakery regularly, and the waitress, 27F, wasn't shy about openly flirting with me. We started dating in secret. She came out but kept it low for my sake. She got kicked out from her house, her parents were homophobic. We still kept hanging out a lot. We weren't recognized as a couple in public cause apparently we didn't look lesbian, both of us being quite feminine, wearing skirts and having no tattoos, as her friend liked to call it. Then, in one of the dates arranged by my family, I met my now husband, let's call him Ivor. On my third date with him, I wasn't feeling very calm. I looked like could burst any second. I was frustrated with my family. I ranted all of this to Ivor in anger and asked him and his family to fuck off while leaving. After a few hours, I realized how I messed up and was damn sure I was going to be disowned by my family, like they did to my cousin. That's when Ivor asks to meet me and confesses that he's gay and has a boyfriend. He's under similar pressure by his family too. I, my girlfriend, Ivor, and his boyfriend went on a double date. None of us had the resources to shift to another country without our family's help. My girlfriend, although she came out to her family, being kicked out did a toll on her, and she wasn't ready for any more judgmental glances. We decided that I and Ivor would get married, and so will my girlfriend and Ivor's boyfriend to each other. Our parents helped and encouraged us to get a house in a nearby city. Ivor's boyfriend had a stable job, and he moved in together with my girlfriend in the same apartment as me and Ivor, just one flat away. Now I'm married to Ivor on papers, but we are not involved sexually with each other. He spends most of his time at work and in the other flat with his boyfriend, while my girlfriend is in this flat with me most of the time, none of us under our family's pressure anymore. But since the last few weeks, my parents have been asking us to give them a grandchild. And now we are in dilemma. We didn't think this through. We just wanted to be with our partners without our parents pestering us, and it was consented by both parties on the other side too. This is so messed up. I feel very guilty. Only if I had the courage to come out when I was young. Only if I wasn't afraid to be ditched by my family who wouldn't accept me like I was. Only if this country wasn't so damn homophobic. Only if I had a better paying job. I can't live my entire life like this, and I realized that too late. I'm a coward. I shouldn't have done anything I did in the last few years. I made some very bad decisions, and I can't even breathe properly with the lump forming in my throat. Update 1. So, ever since my mom started dropping hints about grandkids, things have spiraled out of control. It started with little comments like, "It's been 2 years, what are you waiting for?" and "Your biological clock isn't slowing down, you know." But now she's gone full throttle. She's sending me baby names, baby product recommendations, and even talking about redecorating a room in their house for when the grandchild comes to visit. Ivor's mom joined in too, messaging me and him separately about how it would be the perfect time to start a family. At first, we thought we could brush it off with vague excuses. We're still figuring out finances. Maybe in a few years? But that didn't work. My mom got more persistent, asking why I wasn't seeing a doctor yet or considering IVF. Ivor's mom suggested adoption and even casually brought up surrogacy in a family WhatsApp group. It was becoming impossible to dodge the topic. Ivor and I had a long talk about it, and we realized that just ignoring them wasn't going to work. His boyfriend, let's call him Ethan, and my girlfriend, let's call her Lila, joined the discussion too. The four of us brainstormed ways to get our families off our backs without raising suspicion. Lila suggested we pretend to try for a baby but claim it wasn't working out. But Ivor shot that down, saying it would just lead to endless questions about fertility treatments. Ethan, ever the practical one, joked about borrowing a friend's baby for photos and calling it a day, but we all knew that wasn't sustainable. Things got even more complicated when my mom dropped by unannounced last week. She came with my aunt, who's notorious for stirring up drama. They cornered me in the living room, and my mom said, "We know something's wrong. Is it Ivor? Is he not capable? You can tell us. There are ways to fix these things." I was mortified. My aunt chimed in, saying she knew a fantastic fertility clinic and could book us an appointment. I was sweating bullets, trying to come up with an excuse when Ivor walked in. He must have sensed the tension because he smoothly said, "We're considering all options, but we're not ready yet." That bought us some time, but I could tell my mom wasn't convinced. After they left, Ivor and I sat down again to figure out a plan. Lila was in the kitchen, stress baking, while Ethan was pacing the hallway. Ivor looked at me and said, "What if we just get a donor? Like, actually have a baby?" I thought he was joking at first, but he was dead serious. He explained that having a baby would get our families off our backs permanently and give us more freedom in the long run. Ethan agreed, saying it would keep up the facade and prevent any more invasive questions. Lila, however, was furious. She slammed the rolling pin down and said, "Are you kidding me? You're talking about bringing a whole human into this mess just to keep up appearances? This isn't some sitcom plot." I was torn. I hated the idea of using a child as a cover story, but I also couldn't deny that it might solve our immediate problem. The conversation ended with no resolution, but the pressure kept building. My mom started hinting at visiting fertility doctors together, and Ivor's mom began talking about legacy and family traditions. It was suffocating. Ethan suggested that if we did go the donor route, we could all co-parent. It wouldn't be fake, he said. The baby would have all of us, and we'd make sure they were loved and cared for. That softened Lila's stance a bit, but she still wasn't fully on board. Then last night we had a massive blow-up. Lila told me she felt like I was putting my family's expectations above our relationship. She said she understood why I was scared to come out, but bringing a child into this situation felt like crossing a line. Ivor and Ethan argued that it was the only way to keep the peace without risking being cut off financially. I sat there listening to all of them, feeling like the worst person on the planet. I don't know what to do. If we go through with this, it feels like we're dragging an innocent child into a web of lies. But if we don't, the pressure from our families will only get worse. I can't sleep. I can't focus on work. And I feel like I'm drowning in guilt. I keep thinking about my cousin and how brave he was to live his truth, even when it cost him everything. I wish I had that kind of courage, but I don't. The worst part is, deep down, I know this isn't sustainable. Even if we have a baby, what happens when they grow up? How do we explain this mess to them? I keep telling myself we're doing this to survive, but it's starting to feel like we're just digging ourselves deeper into a hole. I can't even talk to my mom without wanting to scream or cry. Ivor and I agreed to take a few days to think things over before making any decisions. Lila and Ethan are still upset, and I can't blame them. I hate that it's come to this, but I don't see a way out that doesn't hurt someone. I just want to wake up and have everything magically be okay. But life doesn't work like that. For now, we're stuck, and honestly, I don't know if we'll ever get unstuck. Update 2. After we decided to take a few days to think, it felt like the universe took that as an invitation to crank up the chaos. Ivor's mom invited my parents and some relatives over for a surprise family dinner. Nobody told us, so imagine our shock when they all showed up at our door. I was in sweats, Lila was in the middle of folding laundry, and Ethan had just come over to borrow a charger. It was a mess. They all filed into the apartment like it was a planned event, talking about how wonderful it was to get everyone together. Ivor and I exchanged a look that screamed, "We're doomed." My mom immediately noticed Lila and asked, "Oh, is this your friend? I don't think we've met her before." My heart stopped for a second, but Lila just smiled and said, "Hi, I'm a neighbor." Ethan casually grabbed his charger and disappeared into the other flat, leaving me and Ivor to deal with the chaos. Over dinner, the conversation inevitably turned to grandchildren. Ivor's aunt, who's a self-proclaimed expert on family planning, started asking invasive questions about when we were starting our journey. Ivor tried to dodge by saying we were still adjusting to married life, but that just led to a lecture about how we shouldn't wait too long. Meanwhile, my mom kept looking at me like she was expecting some kind of announcement. I was holding my breath the entire time, praying Lila wouldn't walk in and blow our cover. After they finally left, Ivor and I sat down to debrief. We both agreed that the pressure was getting unbearable, but we still couldn't settle on what to do. Ethan came back over, and we all started talking about the logistics of actually having a baby. Lila, still not thrilled with the idea, asked the million-dollar question. What happens if one of us decides we don't want to do this anymore? What if it gets too complicated? That's when Ivor dropped a bombshell. He admitted that his boyfriend, Ethan, had been warming up to the idea of being a dad. Apparently, Ethan had always wanted kids, but assumed it wasn't possible because of their situation. Ivor said he'd been thinking about it too and was leaning toward going through with it, even if it was just for appearances. I didn't know how to react. On one hand, I get where they're coming from, but on the other hand, it feels like they're making this decision without really considering how messy it could get. Lila looked devastated. She told Ivor, "You guys can make this work because your relationship isn't built on lies. But for us, this would be another layer of pretending." That hit me like a truck, because she's not wrong. The next day, my mom called me out of the blue and said she'd booked an appointment with a fertility specialist, just to get some information. I tried to tell her it wasn't necessary, but she wasn't having it. She said, "I'm just trying to help. You'll thank me later." Ivor got a similar call from his mom, who apparently had a list of adoption agencies ready to discuss. We were backed into a corner. Lila decided to stay at her friend's place for a few days to clear her head, and I don't blame her. She said she needed space to figure out what she really wanted, because this situation was starting to feel like a losing battle. Ethan, on the other hand, has been spending more time with Ivor, and it's clear they're leaning toward moving forward with the baby idea. I feel like I'm being pulled in two directions. I love Lila, but I also can't deny that having a baby would solve a lot of our problems. It's not fair to her, though. She didn't sign up for this level of chaos, and I don't want to lose her. At the same time, I feel like Ivor and Ethan are becoming more of a team while Lila and I are falling apart. Then there's the issue of logistics. If we go through with this, who would be the donor? How would we explain the pregnancy to our families? What happens when the baby grows up and starts asking questions? None of us have answers, and it's making me sick to my stomach. Last night, Lila called me. She said, "I can't do this anymore. I love you, but this is breaking me. I feel like I'm losing myself just trying to keep this secret." She said she needed time to figure out if she could stay in this relationship. I didn't know what to say because I feel like I'm losing myself too. Now I'm sitting here in an empty apartment staring at the fertility clinic brochure my mom left on the counter. Ivor and Ethan are in the other flat, probably talking about baby names or something, and Lila hasn't texted me all day. I feel like everything is falling apart, and I don't know how to fix it. This whole plan was supposed to make our lives easier, but now it feels like it's doing the opposite. I can't help but wonder if we should have just come out and dealt with the fallout years ago. Maybe then we wouldn't be in this mess, but it's too late for that now, isn't it? Update 3. So, things went from bad to absolutely unfixable in the last couple of weeks. After Lila's call, where she basically told me she needed space, I knew our relationship was hanging by a thread, but I didn't expect her to actually leave. A few days later, she came to the apartment, packed her things, and said she was going to stay with a friend indefinitely. I asked her if this was a breakup, and she just said, "I don't know. I can't do this right now." That broke me. While I was trying to process losing Lila, Ivor and Ethan were making moves. They decided to move forward with having a baby. Ethan suggested they look into surrogacy or adoption, but Ivor said that biologically having the child might be less suspicious to our families. So yeah, they floated the idea of me being the one to carry the baby. When I heard that, I thought they were joking. They weren't. Ethan tried to frame it like this big, beautiful compromise. He said it would keep the family happy, ensure we weren't cut off financially, and allow them to become parents. Ivor backed him up, saying that since Lila had left, this could be a way to reclaim control over the situation. I sat there stunned and told them I needed time to think. The thing is, I couldn't even talk to Lila about it because she wasn't answering my calls. I felt completely alone. My parents kept calling to check in about the fertility appointment my mom had booked, asking me to send updates on what the doctor said. Ivor's mom started sending baby blanket patterns she'd crocheted, saying she was so excited to see us become a family. I couldn't even go a day without someone reminding me of how trapped I felt. Then came the real kicker. My cousin, the one my family disowned for coming out, reached out to me. He said he'd heard from a mutual friend that I was married and my parents were hounding me about kids. He wanted to check in and offer support. At first, I didn't know what to say. I didn't want to lie, but I also didn't want to dump all this mess on him. Eventually, I told him everything. The fake marriage, the pressure from our families, Lila leaving, and the baby drama. I expected him to be shocked, maybe even judgmental, but instead, he just laughed. He said, "You're trying so hard to avoid being disowned that you're destroying your life in the process. Is this really better than being honest?" That hit me like a truck. He wasn't wrong, but I felt like it was too late to turn back. I told him I couldn't risk being cut off financially or losing whatever fragile relationship I had left with my parents. He said, "I get it, but how much more are you willing to sacrifice to keep pretending?" That conversation stuck with me. I couldn't stop thinking about how far I'd let this go. Ivor and Ethan were moving full steam ahead, talking about fertility tests and timelines, while I was falling apart inside. Every time I looked at my parents' texts or heard Ivor's mom's voice in my head, I felt like I was suffocating. A week later, I hit my breaking point. My mom called me, giddy, saying she'd booked a family vacation so we can all celebrate the next chapter together. She was so excited, talking about how much she loved being a mom and couldn't wait to see me experience it. I hung up and just broke down. I knew I couldn't keep this up. I called Ivor and Ethan to the apartment and told them I couldn't do it. No baby, no more pretending, nothing. I said I was going to come out to my parents and they could do whatever they wanted with their families, but I was done. They didn't take it well. Ethan accused me of being selfish, saying I was throwing away everything we'd built. Ivor just looked disappointed, like he couldn't believe I was backing out. But I didn't care anymore. For the first time in years, I felt like I was doing something for me. The fallout was as bad as I expected. I sat my parents down and told them everything, the fake marriage, my sexuality, all of it. My mom cried for hours. My dad didn't say much, but the look on his face said it all. They didn't disown me, not outright, but they made it clear they were disappointed and needed time to process. I haven't heard from them since that conversation, and honestly, I'm okay with that. Ivor decided to move in with Ethan full-time and tell his family that our marriage wasn't working out. I don't know how that's going to play out for them, but it's not my problem anymore. Lila hasn't come back and I'm not sure she ever will. I can't blame her. She deserved better than the mess I dragged her into. As for me, I'm starting over. I found a small studio apartment in a different city and started therapy. It's terrifying, but it's also freeing. For the first time, I'm living for myself, not for my family or anyone else. I don't know what the future holds, but at least now it feels like my life is mine again. And that's enough for now.